Now it should be working. So, I mean, good morning, Anji, and great to have you over here. And first, we would maybe start off a little bit. You could kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are and what you do.
Okay. So I have a communications background. So I started working in UX a while back. So one of my first gigs was actually building a flight reservation system for a large company in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So did that for a while, and then I kind of wanted to start my own thing. So I decided to do consulting.
Mm-hmm.
So starting a little agency on the side, I started building projects, different products. So I ended up building a first startup called Flagback, which was basically adding a layer on top of the web.
Mm-hmm.
So people could add notes on top of websites for QA.
Oh yeah.
So that was working well in some ways. We were getting interest from clients, but we ended up running out of cash.
Mm-hmm.
Because we were 2 months removed from launching the product with all the features we needed to be able to sell it to customers.
Mm-hmm.
So that was not lean and that was not very agile or anything like that. So I decided to do what everybody would do, and I moved to Asia, and I decided to go learn agile and other ways like to improve product delivery.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, so I went to work in Beijing for a company called ThoughtWorks, and I got the itch to start another business. Ended up building a business called iRvoice, which was doing it was tools to so the way people perceive companies.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, that didn't work out because we were not able to find a market. But I think that's one of the topics we're going to be covering. And I ended up trying to learn the challenges with that and writing a book about some of the experience.
Oh, that's cool. So yeah, you are also the author of Lean B2B. I mean, maybe you could tell us a little bit about like why you ended up writing it and what it's all about.
Yes. So basically, I when we started Our Voice was when Eric Ries launched the Lean Startup.
Mm-hmm.
So we got all excited. We were like, oh wow, that's the way to build a business. So looking at the book, we're trying to figure out how to make it work. Uh, and so we started building landing page. We started doing cold calling, interviews, surveys, all these things. But we were getting a lot of positives, but it was not getting us clients. It was not really working for that.
Mm-hmm.
So we were getting all sorts of things we didn't necessarily understood as feedback, how to address that, how to improve the product based on that.
Yeah.
Uh, and it took us a little while to understand that between like the four steps of the epiphany by Steve Blank, this book, running lean, and all that, there was a bit of a gap. So there are things that work in B2C but don't necessarily work in B2B as well.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I didn't actually click on the fact that most of the case studies in these startup are all for B2C, so it's a different reality. Like there's a lot of things that seem to work when you get a big pool of users, different people you can target with ads and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're actually building a relationship with people, you can't just say like, oh, this week the product is going to be this, then I'm just going to change everything, and then you're going to get something else because you're building a relationship and you need to build on top of what you have. Like it's real people. It's not you can't just run away and just disappear and get new people
Mm-hmm.
because there's less businesses, there's less people working for businesses, and reputation really matters.
Mm-hmm. So if you can kind of open up, you did quite a few case studies, and based on those, you wrote the book. So could you kind of maybe open up a little bit? What are probably the kind of three main takeaways for new founders building something in B2B?
Yeah. So if you approach B2B like B2C, it's going to clash. So there's several techniques that are associated with B2C that are artful in B2B.
Mm-hmm.
So to win in B2B, the core thing is that you need relationship with customers. So the closer you are to customers, the higher your likelihood to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
Which is not necessarily the way people approach it in B2C. You go and learn about the world, and then you build something and you bring it back to them. But
Mm-hmm.
in B2B, it tends to be people first. So you tend to understand the people that you're trying to target, the market you're going after, and then you build something for them specifically for their reality.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're approaching B2B from the outside, it's hard to really understand their reality without really going deep and understanding that. So things like analytics and
Yeah.
MVPs and all that all tend to to come further along the process than in B2C. So
Okay.
it's a bit of a different game in that sense. It's less about optimization. It's more about depth of relationship.
And what about the burn rate then? Like, how does it affect on the burn rate if it takes more and more time to kind of build B2B products? What you kind
Yes.
of should be aware of?
Yes. So depending, there's a great chart that we could share along with this
Yeah.
that shows different types of B2B. So you have more transactional B2B, so things that are more it's more direct. So products are being could be sold online and things like that. So that's a different game. It's more like B2C in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
But there's things that are more eye touch. So where then there needs to be customization. I need to implement stuff at a client's office, and that all tends to take more time. So the minute you need to do or you need to do sales, complex sales, uh, it's going to take longer for your burn rate. So you need to plan that for more time. So in B2B, they tend to say, well, it's going to take you more money. It's going to take you more time to build that sales pipeline to be able to
Mm-hmm.
generate revenue.
Oh yeah, that's pretty cool. Um, then maybe one more question about the book. So kind of you already discussed that like B2B is really different from B2C. So if you could kind of then again summarize the three main differences between B2C, lean B2B and lean B2C based on your discoveries.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. The I think in B2B, one of the key thing is that people don't almost no company is going to buy for pleasure or for luxury or anything like that. So it's always companies buy with the intent to get some return on their investment.
Mm-hmm.
So the need to be able to demonstrate some kind of return on investment is embedded in B2B because business buyers buy for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
So it tends to be so a point that's understated a little bit often, because that's why a lot of business people trying to sell to businesses products that don't necessarily have a clear ROI
Mm-hmm.
have a difficulty getting some traction with the buyers and companies.
Okay.
Another important, yeah, another important point is the depth of client relationships. You need to go deep in companies and the decision-making process. So you're always selling to multiple stakeholders in businesses, which is not always the case when you're selling jewelry or something like that. You don't really have to deal about a different buyer, different types of buyer.
Oh, that's cool. Well, I mean, I've read the book. I think it's great. I mean, great case studies. But like, if you could tell to our listeners and watchers where to get it, and kind of, yeah.
Yes, so it's available on Amazon and Kindle and paperback. Otherwise, it's available on Google Play, Kobo, PDF, all these different formats that you might be looking for.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, yeah, as mentioned, I've read it myself. I think it's great book and kind of gives really good insights into B2B and how it's different from B2B. So if you're
Thank you.
working on B2B space, I mean, you should definitely check it out. But I mean, going a little bit more into detail, like what's customer development in, especially in B2B in practice. I mean, it would be great to kind of dig a little bit deeper when what you did when you built Higher Voice, and I mean, if that's cool, and I mean, first, I
Yeah,
mean, would
sure,
like
for sure.
to I would like to know a little bit about what kind of hypothesis you had, like when you started off. You had read like Lean Startup and Four Steps
Yes,
to Epiphany. So where did you start
yes.
off? Like what kind of hypothesis you had?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So basically, we did uh, maybe the over intellectual way of starting a business. So I sat in a room with a business partner,
Yeah.
and we looked at various market, various ways to approach business, various different types of products. We like different types of marketing strategy, different types of channel, and we tried to figure out what would work in a completely logical and rational way.
Yeah.
And we ended up with this opportunity that we're looking at. We were not from a recruitment background or HR or anything like that. So we were from complete outsiders, but we were looking at employee. We're looking at basically things like what's the name? It's companies that that track the brand monitoring. So they're doing
Mm-hmm.
brand monitoring. They're looking at various keywords shared on social media, and they're trying to assess the sentiment
Mm-hmm.
for businesses. So that's a market that's proven that works really well.
Mm-hmm.
There's a big company that was bought by Salesforce. So that was interesting. We were looking at specifically doing the same thing for employer brand, which was a topic that was really picking up at that point. There were books coming out, there were conferences, there were experts
Mm-hmm.
on LinkedIn, locally, everywhere. So
Yeah.
that was seemed like something exciting, and there were opportunities in that market because there were not a lot of tools targeting that market.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so that felt like a really exciting opportunity, and there was a lot of cool things you could do with the product. So scanning. Doing surveys, doing things outside of that with sentiment analysis and all this. So it felt like an interesting opportunity. So we decided to go in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
And then I lost my first business partner. So I had
Okay.
convinced the business partner to join, and then I lost another one. So we ended up with a business that I had a domain I had half chosen,
Mm-hmm.
and we were on board. So we were moving forward with that.
Okay. So, I mean, that sounds a little bit of a, like a tricky start, but like
Yes, it is.
in terms of like the hypothesis you had, like when you kind of went out and met the customers, what kind of proven to be true that you kind of thought would not be true, or what kind of hypothesis you validated and invalidated?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, from the start, the first week forward, we started cold calling companies, speaking to HR people,
Yeah.
and everybody was getting excited. So it was like, "Oh, that's super interesting. That's really interesting. Oh, we need to speak about it." So we would show up to companies, and they'd be like, "Oh, wow, that's insane. We want this. It's interesting." But the word that kept coming out was interesting. It was not, oh, I have a lot of money, I'm going to spend it on this.
Mm-hmm.
So we kept moving forward. It felt like we were getting validation because people were telling us how interesting it was, how many things they could add to the product, and what
Yeah.
direction it could take. And so we felt like, oh well, this seems really positive. It seems we're moving forward. So we're not validating through sales at that point that much, which proved to be a really big mistake.
Mm-hmm.
So we did build the first version of that product, and it took, I believe that version took 4 months for first customer to actually use it, and 6 months for first paying customers to actually use it. So we had companies implementing it, but it took a long time. People were like, "Oh well, I can't really use it right now, but I'm going to be using it in 3 weeks." Or I can't use it right now, but we're going to be using it at that next milestone that we get.
Yeah.
So we were not able to get like any meaningful product feedback until a few months after, and that
Mm-hmm.
was just killing it. So it was not helping us move forward. So we decided to target another product that people were, because the first product that we built was the first logical step in the process. But people were all mentioning another module we were working on, which was passive candidates, so the people that are not looking for work,
Mm-hmm.
and their assessment of companies was more important.
Mm-hmm.
So we did change a little bit the target afterwards.
Okay, so basically, like we kind of could kind of rewind a little bit and go back to your first product. So, I mean, you
Yeah.
mentioned that it took like 4 months to get it in the hands of the customers, but what did you actually decide to include in the first version and why?
It actually took a month to get in the
Okay,
customer's
yeah.
hands. It took 4 months for them to start using it.
Okay, yeah. Sorry.
So clearly,
Totally.
it was not a core issue for them. It was not something that was really important. So that kind of gave us some ins on trying to build something else. So we
Mm-hmm.
decided instead of building codes, we started building more, I guess, smaller increments of products. So we started validating various products. So over the course of the next 3-4 months, we built 3 different variations of products. So
Mm-hmm.
things that were all part of the initial suite we had in mind,
Mm-hmm.
but that were not specifically what we had built.
Yeah.
And yes, that I think the issue there was that our core assumption, the initial assumption that employer branding was an issue or was a problem for businesses was false. So we thought we were starting with a problem, but it was not really a problem that companies really had.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually had to match our perception of a problem with what businesses were actually saw as problems. So we're trying to find people that had the problems that we were solving.
Mm-hmm. So if you could kind of go back in time, what would you do differently, or what would you advise new entrepreneurs to do differently in order to kind of avoid those kind of mistakes?
Yes, I think it's about starting from in B2B specifically. It's about starting from the people.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to figure out who you're building your product for. So you need to figure out who the early adopters you want to cater to are, and you need to figure out what the product you're going to be putting in place for them
Mm-hmm.
is going to be, and validate with them that they actually have money to pay for the solution.
Yeah.
So because the issue, one of the core things we figured out over the course of that time is that HR is a cost center. It's not a revenue center. So it's most of the issues there are soft benefits. So you're trying to sell things to HR people that don't really think in terms of ROI. They don't really think in terms of analytics.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a hard sell, and most time they don't even control their own budget. So it's hard for them to be able to approve transactions. So things stand still and they don't really move forward, and it's hard for them to really get the picture of what you could be doing with this, because they're rarely early adopters, the people we were meeting.
So basically, if I can summarize, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but basically, like the main idea behind this is that it's truly important to understand like the underlying motivations of people when they work, and not just like what they are saying, but what they are really meaning, what they are kind of saying, and how their normal processes work.
Yes, that's really true, and the last thing you said is particularly true. You need to understand how things actually work right now in the company,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to how they'd like it to work. Because
Mm-hmm.
you especially things that are a bit, because employer brand was always on their wish list, so it's things they'd like to be working on, but it's
Yeah.
not things they actually work on.
Mm-hmm.
So it's things they'd like to invest in, but it's not what they're actually doing. Like their daily job is not that. So there's
Mm-hmm.
a big gap between what they aspire to do and what they're actually doing. And when you're selling them that dream, they're always going to be saying like, "Oh, it's interesting. I'd like to do this, and I'd like to use
Mm-hmm.
this," but it's never going to be their core priorities. So you need to understand the priorities, and you need to understand where they spend money right now. So what they're investing in.
Yeah.
Because most times you're going to be switching money from one budget to another. You're not going to be creating new budgets. It's rare that people are going to create a new budget to buy your tool or your technology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point. And one really interesting thing that another writer says, Rob Fitzpatrick, is that actually it's not might not be a good question to ask like how much are you willing to pay for this solution, but instead of ask like how much is this problem costing you at the moment, and it kind of
Yes.
can help you to kind of uh, get like the real problem and how much is it worth for the customers.
Yeah, it gets people to think differently. So you're thinking in terms of your investment in that problem.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Cool. But then if you could kind of focus a little bit more on the product itself. You
Yes.
told us that you built a couple of versions of it, but I mean, what we would like to understand here is that how you track different kind of metrics from the product. So how you kind of what kind of analytics do you use, and what kind of things you learn from the customers when the product was actually in their hands.
Yes. So we ended up building 6 different products over the course of our business. So parts of different products.
Yeah.
So there's different things we did. So we tried to get it. Initially, the first product it took a long time to get in people's hands. So we never got any analytics on that. Well, we got, but like very, very few. And then the next one was more, it was more wider spread. So we're trying to do to get people's perception. At the same time, we're trying to match that and sell some of the data to businesses.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to build both sides. One was sales. The other side was pure analytics. So we're using the AARR model, the Parrots for Metrics, Metrics for Parrots.
Yeah, Dave McClure,
System
is
by
it?
Dave McClure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're trying to optimize the requisition and our activation to be able to get some good feedback from people using the tool.
Mm-hmm.
So that was working. That was working well. So we're getting a lot of people using our product and generating feedback on employers. So we kind of build a bit of a game that people were able to rate companies and get through goodies and stuff like that. That would come out. They would get the insights on their own perception of companies and their ranking in companies. So that was working well on the B2C side, but the other side, the sales of that was very hard to get. So people were like, "Oh, why would we pay for this in a SaaS model? Why would we not just generate a report?" So we were getting all sorts of friction on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
That was making it not really a easy sell for us. So it was getting more and more strategic, and people were not really used to buying that kind of data.
Mm-hmm.
So that was tricky. So that's the type of metrics that we were tracking, mostly the B2C side and that one.
Mm-hmm.
But we did other tests that were more that didn't even involve coding. So we did another test where we're creating personas for employees in a market, and that was purely like landing page. People would download it and track whether that would work. So that was an interesting test as well. Mostly metrics driven in that case, but the target we were going after tended to be more of the relationships. It was more relationship than actual analytics at this point. It was trying to figure out what their true needs were and what they would be willing to pay for. So it was more about pitching and trying to figure out if this was the right model.
Okay, so could we actually dig a little bit deeper into this? So basically, like when you launched the first version, did you actually go to your customers and kind of see how they use your product, or did you use some kind of heat maps, or kind of how you kind of got the analytics from the users, and how you knew that like they like something or didn't like something?
Well, one of the things we figured out with the first version, which was basically a survey tool that you would set in place and would run different surveys throughout the year, so you can assess the way people feel about the company. The benefit was not. It was a long time before people would get the benefit, and it was a long time before people would actually see the value of the product directly. So it was hard for us to get real assessment on that. So that's another lesson there, that if you want to shorten the time for perception of value by your customers, so you want them to get value from day one, or from the shorter time it takes, the better it's going to be for your business, because your cycles are going to be faster. The time it's going to take is going to be much shorter. So one of the metrics I'm looking at nowadays, it's the time to product market fit.
Oh yeah.
And Andrew Chen was saying that if it takes more than 2 years for you to get to product market fit, your business is going to collapse anyway. So you're going to lose momentum, your team's going to start to quit, and all these problems are going to start appearing. So that's really important, that your cycles are short, and that your time for demonstration of value of the product is short. And that's one thing we were failing at in that case. We were not able to get that right feedback where you could improve the product quickly, because it was 4 months removed from the actual real usage of the product.
That's cool. Yeah, may I actually ask about the time to product market fit? So is it like 2 years for B2B products, or is it applicable also for, hardware and B2C, or kind of how Andrew Chen defines the time to product market fit? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I think he doesn't make a difference between B2B and B2C.
Okay.
I would expect B2B to be longer, or hardware as well to be longer.
Yeah.
But within that cycle, and he goes into details. It's a great blog post. He goes into details about how much runway you actually get, and if you're doing B2B, especially the more complex you get the more runway you will need in that case. So you can go much faster in B2C for that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why he goes into details how you should. The wilder your idea is, the longer the time to product market fit will probably be, unless you just guess the right opportunity. But so that's an interesting metric to look at as well. And
Okay.
that's one of the core things I try to address with the book, how to speed up your product market validation. Because when you're on limited runway, which is pretty much everybody,
Mm-hmm.
it becomes an issue at some point if you can't reach product market validation faster or within your runaway banking account.
That's cool. That's really good information for all the people who are watching this. So we have talked quite a lot about the product itself and how you use it and how you validated it. But I mean, in terms of your internal processes, I mean, it'd be great if you could a little bit like open up what kind of methods you used in practice. Did you build user personas or did you use like business model canvas, and what kind of tools and methods you actually used in practice, and what
Yes.
did you find useful and did you find something unuseful, and yeah, why?
Yeah. So I come from a UX background. So uh, from the first day on, we started building wireframes, so quick prototypes of products, and I started looking at profiles and personas like that,
Mm-hmm.
which actually led us to build like a persona, a tool for HR
Yeah.
in that sense. But uh, you do realize that there's a big difference in user research. So that's the type of stuff I used to do, and customer development. So it's really not the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I might have been blurring a little bit the differences between both.
Okay.
So the aspect of money is core in customer development. So can you get someone to pay for your product?
Mm-hmm.
Versus user research is just understanding and trying to see the opportunity for the product.
Mm-hmm.
So it took us a few months to get a process that was more customer development oriented. So it took us, I think, I would say we probably lost 4 months trying to get the right process for us to interview customers properly, get the right kind of data coming out of it, and assess that and build the products that would really relate to their real problems.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's when we started getting involved with the MIT Entrepreneurship Center at that point.
Yeah.
And it's a bit by taking some of their ideas and some of their approach that we were able to I guess realign our customer development process, which at that point was mostly based on lean startup and the 4 steps on to the epiphany.
Cool. And if you could kind of dig a little bit deeper into the practicalities, so what kind of actually canvases and methods you really used in day-to-day activities at Higher
Yes,
Voice?
yes. We were trying to use the lean canvas initially,
Mm-hmm.
but we never really used it that much because it felt like things were changing too fast a little bit, and we were not really getting that much value out of it. So I never really got into canvases. I tend to do more. Um, it might be faster in some ways to just do whiteboarding a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So we would tend to just share idea, track hypothesis like that.
Mm-hmm.
So more tracking the hypothesis than tracking the full on, because the canvas itself is more like a business visualization in a way,
Yeah,
like
that's
the
true.
different processes. But tends to be more about the actual hypothesis in the way I personally approached it, and I personally work even nowadays. So trying to figure out what your core hypotheses are, what would be your biggest risk, and how to actually get them invalidated or validated as fast
Mm-hmm.
as possible.
Okay, that's cool. Then actually, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you started off Higher Voice, you are just like 2 people, so
Yes.
small duo more or less. So did you have any challenges ever kind of communicating the um, customer learning with each other, or did you actually go into these interviews together, or was it
Yeah.
like you doing it, and what you kind of learned about the process of telling what you learned to each other and stuff.
I tried to. We tried to do the interviews, most of the interviews together,
Okay.
but that did not always happen. So there always is a gap between understanding and the perception. So in that sense, it was. I felt that it's important to be with someone that actually cares about these type of things, that cares about the understanding that we're moving forward and invalidating or validating processes.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible that your business partner does not understand that process or does not care about that process. So in that case, I think we were working well together, and it was working well. Our approach to understanding the market, understanding the opportunities, and understand what might be good for us.
Okay, that's cool. I have a couple of more questions. So basically, now we have talked about like the practical methods, what you have used, and a little bit about the product, how to build it, and how to turn the customer needs into actual MVP. But one really practical thing we would like to learn from you is that how you actually made your first sale. What did the process include? Like you're just a startup company. It's two of you
Yes.
building this tool for companies. How did you actually make the first sale happen?
Yes. So the first sale was first product, and it was well, we did a few sales on the first product. One took us 9 months to get money, and the other one was almost instant money. But so it's two different process. Everything was we didn't have like a transactional process or anything like that, so everything was by check. So we got the money like that, and we were basically providing extra service for the money. So we were investing a lot of time in trying to get that client onboarded, get them to use the tool, do a lot of Q&A and adaptation of the product as they were using it. So which is pretty much what you should be doing, is doing a lot of owning in the product with your first customers. But it was a lot of work for not a lot of money, which is fun at the beginning. Like it's kind of how it tends to be. But it was a good process. So it was based on referral that we got from. I think it was we found an early adopter circle for people in HR. So we had people that actually were discussing technology in HR, and we actually ended up selling to, I believe, half of them. On various products that we were building. So that was it. That was a very valuable customer group that we found. And basically, the first one that signed was a large consulting company. So it already brought us to larger customers. So we didn't really have a choice going from SMB to larger corporations already.
Yeah.
Which also hints at the fact that it's better to select your target market before it selects you, in this sense, because we ended up building features that were aligned with a larger corporation in that case.
Cool. And if we could kind of dig a little bit deeper into the process again, like, you find this great circle of people discussing these challenges, you find your first customers there. It's like, how many meetings did it take for you to actually close the first sale? And did it include free trial for some time? Or how did it actually work in practice?
Yes. So basically, we found the circle through contacts, so basically second-degree contacts. I got in touch with these people. I've never actually met that client. I have yet to meet that person as well.
Yeah.
So it was mostly calls, and we had the various discussions on the phone to try to figure out if it worked for them, if that was going to be good. And they started testing and playing around with the product. We customized a bunch of things for them. And we basically had set in place, I think it was $150 per month, but they were doing, they had a free month. We had a lot of issues in the first free month.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of back and forth with, hey, this doesn't work. This is not good. This is not what I need. This doesn't look good when I send it to my people.
Yeah.
All these things. But it ended up working, and we got a client onboarded, and it stayed around for a little bit of time, until we got into issues that the solution was not necessarily a month per month solution.
Okay, that's interesting. So, like, if you can summarize once again, like, how long the whole process took from first contact with the customers through the referral to the actual sale.
I'd say probably got in touch 1 month before getting the sale, and then after 3-4 calls, we ended up selling to the customer. So I think there was the personal relationship through personal contacts actually played a big part in this.
Mm-hmm.
So it was because she was friend with someone that she trusted that referred us. So that really helped, and maybe it all took us 2 months to get basically our first payment.
Okay, that's cool and probably valuable information for everybody who's watching. Uh, then one more question, if you kind of summarize this, like all what we have to discuss together. So, in your opinion, like based on your own startup experiences and as well as writing the book and doing the interviews, what do you think is the hardest part of customer development? And if you could elaborate a little bit why.
Uh, what I mentioned in the book is that the solution interview part is really the graveyard. Tends to be like you can find problems, you can dig around, you can work in a business and find any problems in the business you're working in, and you can find problems out there. You can speak to people, you can hang out with your friends, and they're going to tell you problems about their business or their personal life. Mm-hmm. So it's easy to find the problems. It's relatively easy to think of solutions. It's very hard to get it to find the right solution to the problem and find the right solution that people will actually pay for. So it's a lot of people either fall off in the analysis of the information that they gather. So which problems are meaningful, which problems will get me some money. Mm-hmm. But it's also when you try to bring it back to people that it tends to fall off as well. So getting to product market fit is very hard actually, mm-hmm. and it's actually a lot harder than you would expect if you've never tried to do it before. Mm-hmm. My background is in UX, so I'm used to dealing with customer problems and all these things. Mm-hmm. I'm used to finding those. I'm used to building solutions. Mm-hmm. But when you do it for your own startup, it's very hard to build something new, bring something new to the world that will actually be can be scaled and built on and replicated and built within different clients.
Oh.
So, yeah. From that side, I think that's the issue, and the core issue I think for entrepreneurs is focus. Mm-hmm. So when you're starting up, you can do everything you want. Like you don't have a boss or anything like that. You can work on analytics 5 hours a day if you want. You can build the nicest widgets in the world. But the reality is you need to focus on things that actually matter, and that's harder than it seems to do. There's a great entrepreneur in Montreal called Fred Lalonde who said that the only things that really matter are getting to product market fit and not running out of money. I think that's pretty true. That's pretty much the only thing that you really need to be focusing on. Everything else is a bit of noise initially.
Well, I think that's a really good summarization for our call. So, I mean, thanks a lot. I mean, it was great to having you over.
Yeah, thanks for having me. That's appreciated.